You're listening to the Packernet Podcast Network.
You ever hear of test driving a phone network? Well, US Cellular is letting you test drive their nationwide 5G for free. Try out US Cellular wherever you have spotty service, your commute to work, that one spot in your house where your service dips. It's as easy as doing a little beep boop pop boop pop with your phone. That's the buttons, that's the noise they make. Anyways, test drive US Cellular's nationwide 5G coverage for free for 30 days. Just download the Try Us app. US Cellular, built for us. Terms apply. Visit uscellular.com/try us.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Well, I found a video that piqued my interest a little bit, not only because I wanted to explore it myself, but also just because after having looked at it, it's kind of interesting. And that is why or why not Jordan Love could win MVP. The thing that kind of piqued my interest initially was poking around the old internet, and I found a video from Pocket Presence. This is the Kurt Benkert. I don't know if it's his or if he's just a part of it or what, but Kurt Benkert is one of the guys on there, and he did a video called 10 Reasons Jordan Love Could Win NFL MVP. Now, there's going to be some spoilers, so, if you want to actually watch it, maybe skip ahead a couple seconds or something. But here are the 10 reasons he came up with. And the reason I'm going to read it is because obviously I'm going to have a very different approach than him. But here are his 10 reasons. Number 1, red zone excellence. Number 2, processing and adaptability. 3, arm talent and ball placement. 4, poise under pressure. 5, scheme elevation. 6, clutch performance. 7, growth potential. 8th, supporting cast. 9th, statistical projection. 10th, intangibles. So I think, and again, feel free to watch the video and see what context he provides. But some of this is kind of hard to gauge, right? Because the problem that I have is MVP isn't really a gauge of how good you are. It's a gauge of how good you are in comparison to other people. We're going to go back and look at some other MVPs, and it is kind of interesting to see how some years you've got guys that are significantly better. You'll find some years where the 5th best quarterback is better than any other quarterback from 2 years prior or something. And so it's not really a question of, is Jordan Love good enough? You plug him in 2017 or something, and yeah, it's not that hard. So the real question is, for all 10 of these, who doesn't have these things? And when you say things like Love consistently made great plays in the red zone, okay, do you mean like actually statistically? Or do you mean it like Bears fans mean it when they say, Justin Fields is great because he consistently does this, that, or the other? And what they really mean is, I've seen a highlight video of him doing it like 5 times. But let's just look at these just for the heck of it, right? Red zone. So inside the opponent's 20-yard line. If we look at points earned, Jordan Love actually ranked 22nd. Points earned per play, same thing. He was 22nd. EPA, he ranks 29th. You look at wins above replacement, 22nd. So statistically speaking, I don't know that he necessarily dominated in the red zone. Now, maybe we're talking about just down the stretch, which we can look at that as well. Start in week 9. Points earned, he was actually 30th. Points earned per play, 29th. EPA, 26th. Wins above replacement, 32nd. So as far as I can tell, he actually was not very good as a passer in the red zone, even in the second half. So again, I have a feeling that what he did is what he always does, which is film study, which is fine. But again, my biggest issue with film study is that it's very good for context. In other words, the stats can't always tell you context. The problem is it's really bad at answering questions like I want them answered. You can find great things on film, wonderful, but how does that balance out with the bad? You have to look at every single snap, every single play. You have to chart every single one of those, and then I need you to compare it to all the other quarterbacks. And if you can't tell me that, you're not telling me anything. So the fact that, yes, there's some really crazy, awesome plays that he had doesn't really tell me much. Beyond that, I have no idea how much any of this has anything to do with being an MVP. I'm guessing what he's getting at, more or less, is how these things will correlate to him just being a good quarterback, and good quarterbacks win MVPs. But again, I have no interest in doing things the way that he did things. Let's just actually look at the question. 10 reasons Jordan Love could win MVP. What I need to know is, what does it take to be an MVP? Isn't that kind of the question? Because part of the problem is MVP is kind of a bullcrap category. And in fact, I have less respect for it now that I've actually gone back and looked at it. But I went back to 2016. The reason I stopped at 2016 is because that's where SIS ends. It actually goes to 2015, but they don't have some of the stats, so I left it at 2016. But I went and grabbed things that I thought maybe the voters would be voting on. So obviously you go with just the raw, simple numbers like yards and touchdowns, because of course the voters are going to be interested in that. I also looked at PFF and a few other things that just kind of gauge how good you are overall. And I especially wanted that for guys like Lamar, because if you just look at Lamar as a passer, he should have won exactly 0 MVPs. You have to include the rushing or it doesn't matter. And so rather than just looking at rushing, I looked at cumulative things like points earned in PFF. I also have PFF passing grade. I have big time throw percentage just because, I wanted to factor in, the big plays, passer rating, EPA, which is a passing statistic, the EPA passing, I don't want to say grade, but stat. Points earned passing, points earned total. And then what I have for all of these things, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different statistics. I also have their rank because, again, that's kind of the most important thing. I wish I could give you something more. I wish I didn't have to tell you what I'm about to tell you, but it's actually very easy. There's just a couple rules of how somebody wins an MVP. There's really only 3 different categories. Number 1 is to be number 1 in passer rating. Passer rating is by far the most important category. Every single MVP winner has been either first, second, or third, with the exception of Lamar Jackson this past year. So the rules are: number 1 is to either rank number 1 in passer rating, or rank top 2 in passer rating and have some incredible yards and touchdown, and be actually number 1 in yards and touchdowns. And beyond that, you have to crack 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. Or the third one, you have to be Lamar Jackson. So let's go through this. Matt Ryan won in 2016. He was number 1 in passer rating. Tom Brady was number 2 in passer rating, but he had 5,700 yards and 40 touchdowns. In 2018, Pat Mahomes was second in passer rating, but he had 5,700 yards and 53 touchdowns. In 2019, you have Lamar Jackson, so there you go. In 2020, you had Aaron Rodgers, who was second in passer rating, but he had 4,900 yards and 53 touchdowns. In 2021, Aaron Rodgers was first in passer rating. In 2022, Pat Mahomes was second in passer rating, but he had 5,900 yards and 48 touchdowns. In 2023 was Lamar Jackson. So either you're number 1, you're number 2 with over 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns, or you're Lamar Jackson. The 2 times Lamar Jackson, he was 3rd and 5th in passer rating, but so he was 3rd in passer rating in 2019. He was 19th in yards and number 1 in touchdowns, but with just 37 touchdowns. So again, that was one of those low bar years. However, points earned, again, looking at rushing statistics, he was number 1. So there you go. 2023, it's really hard to make a case for Lamar Jackson. 12th in touchdowns, 12th in yards, 9th in touchdowns, 3rd PFF, 11th PFF passing grade, 15th in big time throw, 5th in passer rating, 11th in EPA per pass, 12th in PE pass, 4th in points earned overall. I think Josh Allen probably should have won. So the easiest way is to be number 1 in passer rating. Now, if you're number one in passer rating and you have somebody else that blows you out of the water in yards and touchdowns, you might not win, or Lamar Jackson might beat you. But that's the easiest way to do it. And what have the passer ratings been? The lowest passer rating, not including Lamar Jackson, because he had the lowest, but that's the Lamar. He uses the Lamar rule, which is being Lamar Jackson, was Tom Brady Tom Brady in 2017 had a 103.9. The highest, and actually he was second, so the highest that was number one, 110.9. So Aaron Rodgers in 2021, which I still contend he should not have won that year. And that's sort of another issue. Because if that was Jordan Love that had that exact same stat line in 2021, Jordan Love I don't think would have won. The reason Aaron Rodgers won is because it's Aaron Rodgers. So there's another issue where Pat Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers and Lamar Jackson and, you know, guys like Matt Ryan and Tom Brady, they're more easily going to win these awards because they're already seen as these top guys, right? Jordan Love isn't really. So if it's kind of borderline, or if you're the third, fourth, fifth best to second best, you're probably not going to win. But still, the lowest passer rating of a quarterback who won MVP with the number one passer rating, whatever, was 110.9. So I would say the goal is you want a passer rating of 110, or you need to have over 4,000 yards, over 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns, or you need to be Lamar Jackson. He can't do the third one. Now, if we look at week 9 on, Jordan Love had, his passer rating was a 108.2. That puts him in that could be good enough category. The problem is Brock Purdy dominates passer rating. In fact, Brock Purdy probably should have won MVP this last year, or he always has a really high passer rating, and that's always what they vote on. But Brock Purdy is not likable. Nobody likes him. Nobody wants to vote for him. Everybody thinks that he's a fluke, and it's all the 49ers, and it's all this stuff. Bottom line is he dominates everything. So he's going to be tough to beat in passer rating. Dak Prescott also was 110.7. It's another guy that I just don't know if he's going to get a lot of votes because he's just seen as like a top 10-ish, not really top 5, top 1 type of quarterback. But here's the other thing. If you take those stats that he had from week 9 and you spread that over an entire season, he's at about 4,800 yards and 38 touchdowns in the regular season. Listen, it doesn't come near some of these ridiculous numbers. Matt Ryan had almost 6,000. Tom Brady had 57. Pat Mahomes, 56. Pat Mahomes in 2022 was 59. I mean, these are just ungodly numbers. But that would be higher than anybody had this past year. The highest was Tua had 46.79 compared to 47.98. The touchdowns, Dak Prescott had 36. Remember, we're talking 38 for Jordan. If Jordan Love is like second in passer rating and has nearly 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns, that might do it. But either way, here's sort of the question that I would ask. Do we really think it's reasonable? Let's say this is sort of a general thing. Because remember, Rodgers was never big with yards and touchdowns. I mean, he clearing 4,040 yards was not that big of a deal. Clearing 5,000, though, that was tough. The touchdowns he could get, the yards, that was more of a Matt Ryan, Pat Mahomes thing. Even in 2011, when he was just playing out of his mind, he had 4,600 yards and 45 touchdowns. 2010 and 2016 were the only 2 years he was over 5,000. So, you know, I mean, it might be more of a Packers offense kind of thing. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But the bottom line is, let's say he plays for 10 years, and this is generally where he's at. Mid 4,000s and around 40 touchdowns. Somewhere, let's say, between 30 and 50 is kind of his range, similar to what Rodgers was operating with. And his passer rating is going to be in and around, you know, it's going to be over 100 pretty consistently. Do we think he's never going to win MVP? Especially if he does this consistently enough. You know that, you know, there's going to be some skepticism, just like there is with Brock and some other guys. But if he comes out and he looks really good in year 1 like he did, and in year 2 he proves that year 1 wasn't a fluke, at some point they're going to be looking for a reason to vote for the guy. Is Jordan Love going to win MVP if he's a 4,800 yard passer, pushing 40 touchdowns and a 105 to 110 passer rating on a yearly basis, of course he's going to win MVP. It might not be 100% certainty, but it's a pretty high certainty. So again, it's going to come down to the other guys around him. But does he have the requisite talent to be the guy that can check those boxes? He can't check the Lamar Jackson box. In fact, actually, since none of the SIS things were relevant, we can go back further in time. Just curious about a few more of these. So we might have to add Cam Newton to the Lamar Jackson category. The year before that was Aaron Rodgers in 2014. He was second in passer rating. He had 4,400 yards and 38 touchdowns. Trying to think what the other options would have been if not him. Ben Roethlisberger, but he only had 32 touchdowns. Tony Romo would have been the other MVP candidate, but he had 3,700 yards, so not a lot of great options. 2013, the MVP winner was Peyton Manning. He was second in passer rating, 5,400 yards, 55 touchdowns, so he checks that box. 2012 was Adrian Peterson, so that's obviously a massive anomaly there. 2011 was again Aaron Rodgers. He had the highest passer rating, so checks that box. 2010 was Tom Brady. He had the highest passer rating. 2009 was Peyton Manning. He does not check the box. That would have been Drew Brees. Drew Brees has been snubbed a couple times. There's been a few times where I think like Tom Brady won it and Drew Brees actually had the highest passer rating. As far as yards and touchdowns, yeah, this is one of those things where I think Peyton Manning is just the known commodity. He was second in yards. He was third in touchdowns behind Brees and Favre. PFF, Favre, Rivers, Brees, Rodgers were ahead of Manning. Passing grade, he was fifth. Passer rating, Manning was sixth. So, occasionally you just get these guys that are just idolized, that just didn't deserve it. I think Peyton Manning in 2009 might be one of the worst examples I've seen. Cam Newton 2015 is a pretty bad one too, although you'd have to look at his rushing. Anyways, point is, because he's obviously not, at least at this point, he's not in that echelon of he's going to get it when he doesn't deserve it. And, cracking that 5,000 yard, 40 touchdown thing is going to be tough. So I think the best thing you could do is be first or second best in passer rating and hope that somebody like Brock Purdy or somebody that's less desirable than you is number one. I'll be honest, and I've said this before, we should just pick a definitive way to choose an MVP. And for me, I would like to do points earned, period. Because it references all the positions, and it's literally the most valuable player. It is the metric for value. You could pick a different one if you want, EPA, whatever, but the one that I have access to, or you could use PFF grade, but that's not really what we're looking for. Because you can have a guy that is a 99 punter that does not give as much value as a 99 quarterback. Now, granted, most people want MVP to just be the guy that performed the best, which is not adjusting for position. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I've also said we should just have two different awards. You have the most valuable player, which is as it says it is, and then you have something like most outstanding player, which is just the best player irrespective of position. But I want to take a break, and when we come back, I want to actually tell you, in my opinion, who the MVPs have been over the last however many years. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. My son started collecting football cards. I had no idea what the heck I was doing, so I went out and bought him one of those binders you put all the cards in and all that kind of stuff. Turns out, card collecting has come a long way since when I was a kid, and that's what people did. Now, there is a new way to buy, sell, and trade cards. It's called Arena Club. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the all-in-one trading card platform that you have to sign up for. Over at arenaclub.com/packdaddy. We actually did a whole YouTube video about this. I would encourage you to check it out. It is a fantastic website. You can, as I said, you can buy, trade, sell, but also you can display all of your cards right there on the platform. It gives you all of the grading. They'll even grade your cards. Their grading combines AI as well as human grading to get the most accurate grading of all your cards. And right now, you can get 10% off your first purchase by going to arenaclub.com/packdaddy. That's arenaclub.com/packdaddy for 10% off your first purchase. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. You ever hear of test driving a phone network? Well, US Cellular is letting you test drive their nationwide 5G for free. Try out US Cellular wherever you have spotty service, your commute to work, that one spot in your house where your service dips. It's as easy as doing a little beep boop pop boop pop with your phone. That's the buttons, that's the noise they make. Anyways, test drive US Cellular's nationwide 5G coverage for free for 30 days. Just download the Try Us app. US Cellular, built for us. Terms apply. Visit uscellular.com/try us.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
All right, so just for the sake of curiosity, if we did use total points as a metric, they would all be quarterbacks since 2016. It's really not even close. I mean, if you look at the comparison with Christian McCaffrey, for example, his total points, on a high year, we're talking like 50. These guys are at like 150. 180. Mahomes in 2022 was 195. But anyway, starting in 2016, instead of Matt Ryan, which was never going to happen anyways, because again, he had almost 6,000 yards and 47 touchdowns, but Matt Ryan would have been second behind Drew Brees. Interestingly enough, though, Matt Ryan would have gotten it in 2017 over Tom Brady. Again, Brady had 5,700 yards and 40 touchdowns, so he got the nod. But I have Matt Ryan with more points added. In 2018, they had Pat Mahomes. I have Pat Mahomes. In 2019, they had Lamar. I had Lamar. In 2020, it's going to upset some people, instead of Aaron Rodgers is Deshaun Watson. In 2021, instead of Aaron Rodgers is Justin Herbert. 2022, Pat Mahomes. I have Pat Mahomes. And then this past year, 2023, instead of Lamar Jackson, it's Josh Allen. So this would have stripped away at least 2 of Aaron Rodgers' MVPs. I can't go back further than this to check, on his other ones, but that's where we'd be at right now. And obviously you can say that's overly simplistic and that's fine. I would just rather have some kind of a standard, right? I mean, if you want to say, bro, Matt Ryan absolutely should win. When you're kissing 6,000 yards and almost 50 touchdowns, you should, all right, fine. Sorry, Drew, we're doing it. 2020 Rodgers was obviously on something pretty special. If you want to give it to him instead of Deshaun, whatever. But I still think we're moving in a better direction than a bunch of writers going, I don't know, he was pretty cool. Or in the case of one of the voters saying, I'm not voting for Rodgers because of his medical choices, which is frickin' psychotic. I think we do a lot better job than basically looking at passer rating. I had no idea that would be the thing, but that's basically the thing. We're going with passer rating, unless you just blow everything out of the water. Or again, you're Lamar Jackson and you run a lot. That didn't take nearly as long as I thought. Why don't we kick it over to some calls here, and then we'll call it for the day. We've got, as soon as I get my settings set up here, Garrett from Southern Illinois. What's going on, man?
Hey, Ryan. It's Garrett from Southern Illinois.
What's up?
So I have a game sequence scenario that I wanted you to kind of just analyze with the rest of us. And my question is, this new kickoff system that's in place with how the kicker is kind of put in a precarious position of really needing to be a good tackler, in my opinion. Do we put someone else in for kickoffs that's actually a competent kicker that practices a certain type of kick that's going to be strategically beneficial to special teams, and that doesn't put Carlson in harm's way? So hear me out. We keep him only for field goals, not for kickoffs. We find someone on the team that is a competent kicker that can be trained, just like a field goal kicker who specializes in one thing, or a punter who specializes in one thing. You have a special teams kicker who specializes in kicking the ball strategically so that there cannot be a return that can be run back for a long way. So, is there somebody on the team that you think can pull that off? Do they need to consider that as an option? Just like with Kansas City is the one that got me thinking about this. They're going to utilize, I think, somebody instead of Butker on special teams to kick off. I think it's safety or somebody. Somebody who's actually a competent kicker. Sorry, tackler. So, tell me what you think. Is there a scenario that would work out that we actually pull that off? You know, someone like Eric Wilson or somebody who's already on special teams. I don't know.
Well, I think somebody else has asked this before, and I know it's been a topic of discussion ever since I think it's the Chiefs or whatever, because they do have a guy that can kick on their team, safety, I think. But I think the biggest reason that it makes sense is because the kicker's kind of useless. Insofar as useless isn't necessarily fair, but you don't need to be a really good kicker. You can be a pretty mediocre kicker. I mean, high school kickers, middle school kickers, probably all over the country can make this kick. So exploring your options as far as, can we find a safety, can we find a linebacker, something like that has kicked at some level, and just see if they can because they have to do it consistently, because it is a big deal to accidentally kick it into the end zone, to accidentally kick it out of bounds, whatever. So it has to be like 100% of the time. You got to be able to hit it in that zone. So it can't just be some random Joe. Like, I can make that kick, but occasionally I'm definitely not going to make. I'm going to shank that thing straight out of bounds. I'm going to hit my own guy in the back of the head. So you don't need an NFL caliber kicker to be able to make it work, but you do need a guy that can make that kick consistently. And I would be a little worried about just grabbing some random Joe and saying, "Hey, learn how to kick," and he's just going to be, he's going to drill one of his own guys in the back of his legs, or he's going to hop it even behind them or something. So the question would be more so, can you find somebody that actually can kick? Maybe not quite as good as an NFL kicker, but a guy that, can consistently do that. And then if those people exist, how much do you actually want to invest in that? Like, are you actually going to draft a guy, let's say in the 4th or 5th round, who's a linebacker that's maybe not really even worth taking as a linebacker, but he also has some kicking experience, so he'd be a better option at kickoffs? Do we want to put that guy on our team? That's kind of the question. So you got to find the guy first and then determine, is it worth it? But I don't know that we can just take, like you say, Eric Wilson and just say, let's teach him how to kick. I don't think that's going to work. But I do think it's worth looking into, because there are guys that, they do everything. We go through all the things when we look at the college guys. It's like, oh, they played linebacker, they played wide receiver, they played quarterback, they also kicked, So it's worth it going forward. I wouldn't just, it's not that important that it's like, let's just get any linebacker and hope he can get it in that little square. It might end up being something similar to, which would be hilarious. You know how we always, in the draft process, we're always talking about, and he's got some returnability. It's almost like a one-word thing, returnability. Returnability. He's got that returnability. But now we got guys that have kickability, which is probably going to be less prominent. But man, you find a A linebacker that's, fourth, fifth round potential, but he kicked at some point. I'm just saying, maybe. And then if you kick and return, you got a linebacker that has kicking experience and return experience. Oh my goodness gracious. Or even a running back or something. Oof. Can you imagine? How much would Gutekunst lose his freaking mind if there was a running back, 5'11", 225 pounds, he kicked in high school and was a returner all through college? Gutekunst would convulse. They would have to restrain him from drafting him in the first round. It's like, bro, he's a third round pick. Like, don't do it. It's like, fine, but we're taking him in the second. I don't want to hear it. All right, why don't we take a break, and we'll come back with some more. We got a couple more from Garrett, and we'll see how much further we can get. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Part 2. So, what is a realistic expectation for Anders Carlson this year? They clearly are making it competitive. So, should we have an expectation of, say, you can go back and look and see what Mason Crosby's best season ever, what was his field goal percentage accuracy, find out who's had the highest maybe the last 5 years in the NFL, and maybe come somewhere in there where we settle on what is a acceptable field goal percentage accuracy for Anders Carlson this season.
Well, I think it's a good question. It's a good long-term question for, a show like this, but not right now because I'm doing the calls, to look at in the future. But listen, bottom line for Anders Carlson, make the extra points. If he made his extra points last year, he would have been a great kicker. That was the whole issue, was the extra points. It feels like he just sucked as a kicker. Or I remember my contention before I just looked at it was that, he was fine from like 50 and 40, but inside of that, he really struggled. That's not true. Even from short distances, his percentages were not bad. It was the only area where he ranked really poorly was extra points, which is a huge deal. I'm not saying that means he's not a struggling kicker. It's a huge deal. But that's the thing he needs to get better at, which is so stupid because it's like, I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, it'd be real easy to say, look, I think this was a weird fluke, and he's going to be fine. He's going to be great. Because obviously, if you can kick from 20 and 30 and 40 and 50, I'm sure you'll figure out the extra point thing. But at the same time, I don't know. Maybe not, and maybe the 50-yarders start to dip, and he ends up being a terrible kicker. I have no idea. But yeah, we definitely should set up somewhat of a baseline. But again, bottom line is, what he did last year was more or less fine. But you got to make your freaking extra points. That's the bottom line.
And to finish my thought on a previous call about Ed Policy enacting new rules for Green Bay,
yeah,
I got one more. This was the one that actually got the idea started. I think Ed Policy needs to write a rule that using the word defense is not freaking allowed.
Yeah, I agree.
Under any circumstances, should someone be able to utter the word defense?
Yeah, defense is horrible.
I'm out.
I mean, I would take it a step further, but there'd be a mutiny. I would do away with carry the G. That is so dumb. It's so dumb. But, I think pretty much the whole team has embraced it. 95% of the fan base has embraced it. I find it to be the most cringy garbage ever. I don't know why. I don't know why I hate it. I just hate it. But I think all of it, the worst thing ever was the D train. For obvious reasons. I could not believe that was a thing. Like, guys, are we seriously doing this? Are we seriously going to call the defense the D train? Am I the only one that sees this as being problematic? Is this me? Guys, please? So we did away with that and came up with frickin' we fence, which I guarantee you is a Matt LaFleur thing, which just, again, Matt LaFleur is a nice guy. But, Matt LaFleur is like that guy who sends out a text message to all the boys and is like, hey, boys, how about you come over to my place this weekend? Like, huh? We'll have a boys' night out, and you go over and you're expecting there's going to be booze and like some burgers and some movies or so. Like, we're going to have a good time. We're going to watch some ball, get some pizzas. Dude's got board games out, you know? Who wants to play Scrabble? Dog. Frickin' Wii fence. We do this together. Some things are like implied. You know, you don't have to say it out loud and then make it into the worst slogan in the world. We care about each other. So stupid.
Ryan, man, I called earlier for the first time ever, and
what's up?
I was listening to the same stupid podcast that I mentioned prior.
Okay.
And they're ranking coaches.
Oh,
and they're
but not mine.
picking Dan Campbell over Matt LaFleur.
Hey.
And then in some instances, they said they'd even pick Kevin O'Connell over Matt LaFleur.
What podcast is this?
Make it make sense. Like, I'm not picking up what they're putting down.
Let me go back to your last call here. You mentioned one Packers podcast and then Move the Sticks, which is not Packers-centric. So I have to assume this is Move the Sticks you're referring to. I don't know. I mean, Kevin O'Connell has always gotten a massive amount of praise. And I'm not saying he's a bad coach, because I don't think he's a bad coach. I don't think Dan Campbell's a bad coach. I think he's a good coach. But there are certain elements of, like, shouldn't they have to prove it a little bit more? Like, Dan Campbell, I think, has proven it insofar as what he's been able to get out of these guys has been pretty impressive. I think they've overachieved for a long time. They're better than what's on paper. The Vikings, I don't know, man. I think, and you could point to last year, like when Kirk Cousins was out some games and they performed pretty well, and you can put that on Kevin O'Connell. This might be kind of like Matt LaFleur after Rodgers leaves kind of a thing, where it's like, okay, now let's see how this looks. Because when you got Kirk Cousins and you got Justin Jefferson and now you got the offensive line kind of humming, you kind of expect a better offense. And they have been a better offense. Not, I don't think top 5 or even necessarily top 10, but formidable. The defense is terrible, but, you know, that's a personnel thing and he's an offensive guy. I don't know. I mean, look, I think they're all good coaches. I think the slander against the Packers is absurd. I mean, the Packers have had elite offenses. If you look back over the tenure of these 3 coaches, and if you want to say like overall head coach, offense, defense, whatever, I could kind of understand Dan Campbell a little bit. I think the Lions are overhyped, to be honest. Again, the consensus right now is that the Lions are like the 3rd best team in football or something, and the Packers are like the 7th. That's absurd. That's just absurd. The Lions are not the 3rd best team. They didn't belong in that game with the 49ers. They wouldn't have even beaten the Packers. They wouldn't beat they're not better than the Ravens. They're not better than the Bengals. They're not better than the Chiefs. You know, the Eagles, depends if that's the really good Eagles or the crap Eagles. They're not better than a decent Eagles team. But I don't know. I think Matt LaFleur is probably the best play caller of the group. As far as like head coach, I think you could probably make a case for Campbell, maybe. I mean, again, if you're looking at Jared Goff and, you know, Amon-Ra and a bunch of just kind of nobodies, and they've never really had a run game. I mean, they've had a run game, but not really like elite running backs, like DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. But they made it work really well. And I think the defense is sometimes the defense has been horrific, but at times has overperformed based on just putrid talent. But at the same time, I think you want to see like an elite group, and the Packers have had elite groups. The Packers under Matt LaFleur numerous times have had Super Bowl caliber teams with 2 different quarterbacks. So I'm trying to be unbiased and trying to see it, and I think you can make a case for Dan Campbell, although I think Matt LaFleur is the better option. Kevin O'Connell, I think, is a fine coach, but I don't know. I don't know that he's done anything to this point to be put above Matt LaFleur. And now that Kirk Cousins is gone, I just really struggle to see that it's going to happen unless they get JJ by next year and they just start ripping it. But again, Kirk Cousins was pretty good, and they struggled to even get to the playoffs. And then they fell apart by that point. I mean, that's a coaching thing. And the freaking Lions, I mean, as much as we want to talk up Dan Campbell, again, for the sake of, yes, they finally don't suck for the first time ever, and yes, they finally got to the playoffs, that's great. So if we hold them to this rock-bottom bullcrap standard, yeah, Dan Campbell looks good. But if we just hold him on an equal plane, Dan Campbell has not accomplished jack squat compared to Matt LaFleur. Well, he had Rodgers. Okay, he had a disgruntled Rodgers, who in 2019 Remember, 2018 was crap. This team completely flipped around in 2019 and was a Super Bowl contender. And then by 2020, just 2 years into this thing, they had the number one offense and were the best team in football. And by 2022, Aaron Rodgers was just not very good. And then he had a brand new quarterback, and look what happened by the end of that year. So I think he is massively deserving of a lot more credit than he gets. And I mean, that's been stated 1,000 times on this podcast. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend he's the best coach because I don't know. I wouldn't even know where to begin with trying to gauge that. I guess I would just say for all three teams, you should probably be happy with your head coach. I don't think I would be sitting here saying anything different. Now, the Bears, I don't know. We got to see. There's some potential that they completely did a 180 on that defense, and it was really getting going hardcore toward the end of the season. If they can get the defense playing at a really high level, and if they can nail this quarterback here and get an offense going, which presumably is going to be the offensive coordinator, but still, as the head coach, bring this whole thing together and be at least a playoff contender, there might be 4 good coaches. I would say as of right now, there's 3. All right, I'm going to close it down. It's getting way too late for me. I would do one more, but we got 2 from Daniel, so I don't want to do 2 calls, and I don't want to get caught with the 3-minute thing and then have to go over, et cetera, et cetera. So you guys have a good rest of your day. I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.